It's a pleasure to be here today. Yeah. And there we go. My name is Stéphanie Durand. Like we just said, I lead.
Go by the mic.
Oh, I thought I was off mic, but that's okay. I can use the mic. Pleasure to be here today. Such a great lineup of speakers and sessions. I look forward to hearing more this afternoon. And so I'm going to talk about a topic that at first glance may perhaps seem a little bit provocative. Students feel ready, managers disagree. Not sure if it resonates for you all. But I've been, really over the past 20 years working with higher education leaders, learning and development, and most recently with CodeSignal talent acquisition. And I don't think I've seen a time that I would say was both exciting, to some extent exhilarating, but also really uncertain and to some extent full of anxiety for a lot of people. When we think about universities, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, everyone thought they would be replaced by MOOCs, online courses. This didn't happen. Then COVID hit, and people had to, students and faculty alike, overnight figure out how to do it from home. Thankfully, everyone went back to campus. And then in November 2022, this thing called ChatGPT, came up. And I think in 5 days, 1 million people joined the platform. And today, there's not a day where I don't hear the word, AI or agent or agentic AI, you name it, because a lot of people just don't know how to navigate. And so on the employer side, Yeah, no problem. I'm actually not even to slide 2 yet, so not a problem. So yes, on the employer side, I think it's not as much, and obviously I'm talking to, a very well-informed audience here, but it's not as much a lack of applicants or a lack of talent. It's really a need to, hire cautiously, just because what I hear from a lot of employers is we're not sure how ready these applicants are. And so that's really the main concern that I'm hearing all the time. So on one hand, we have universities that are still optimizing for knowers for the most part, and I think that's changing, thankfully, and I will talk about it. And then employers who are seeking doers. And in a time of AI, where everything changes so rapidly, knowledge may just not be enough anymore. So let's dive in. And today I'm going to talk about some of those challenges and really try to dive in, but also, I promise, come with some hope and a lot of opportunity ahead. But look at the stats. I mean, they were pretty mind-blowing to me. They were actually from this year, from a study done by Ripple Match. 98% of students feel confident in professional communication. I don't know if they feel surprising to you, but I was quite shocked. 85% of students say they're ready to learn new tools on the job. And yet 60% of employers have fired a Gen Z employee. I mean, that gives me a little bit of the chills. So clearly there's a disconnect between the actual skill readiness and the perceived skilled readiness. There's a few reasons for that. I really like this graph. It goes all the way back to the 1400s with the Gutenberg print press, and you can see the acceleration of innovation and more innovation. And I mean, this is just, continuing every single day. And of course, this puts a different type of pressure on the skills needed for candidates, right? And the skills that employers are expecting. When you think about certain jobs where certain tasks, not all, thankfully, are being replaced with AI, the bar is just continuing going up. On the candidate side, there's also questions, and they don't know what they don't know, like what are these new skills or this higher bar from employers? So what we're also seeing is that part of the issue is that traditional method of hiring are still very much, happening. And what I mean by that is relying on a CV, relying on a pedigree, relying on a school someone has attended. And so we actually publish at CodeSignal an annual report called the University Ranking Report, and we look at the top scores in the coding assessment that we provide. And you can see, I mean, almost a third of the top scores come from schools that are actually not ranked in the top 50 listing. And similarly, 12 out of the 50 schools in our report do not make the top 50. So there's definitely like a very big pool of talent out there that certain companies may miss out on by not focusing enough on skills. Obviously, this career readiness gap, as I like to call it, has a real impact. And there's many ways, this causes an impact, but let me just call it 3. The first is, according to a General Assembly report, only a quarter of entry level hires feel very prepared. I mean, this is really low. I mean, that means that the majority are not very prepared, so they're just half prepared or not prepared. You can imagine the type of pressure it poses from a performance perspective. It's also, the data shows it's more around soft skills than technical skills. So we keep talking about technical skills evolving every day and AI, but soft skills is actually a real gap, and students are oftentimes, especially maybe those who, spend a lot of time at home during COVID and were not on campus. I mean, there's just all these things that happen too, where people have maybe missed out on the ability to really build those social durable skills. And then lastly, the cost of hiring and retraining. So someone less prepared will need more mentoring, will need more onboarding, and worst case scenario will need even to be rehired. All right, one more slide around sort of the diagnostic, and then I promise I will talk about solution. I think another big change for all of us here is that we've all become lifelong learners. At my time, you would go to school, you would get a degree, find a job, and that would kind of be your career trajectory. But given how quickly skills are evolving, I think the average shelf life of a skill is 18 months. This may have even gone lower with Gen AI. We all have to continuously upskill. And I see it myself with the knowledge of, how to use AI tools and ChatGPT and prompting. And I speak to peers and people in the HR space who also have to figure out how to continuously upskill their team, but also themselves. And so it's really important that beyond what universities are doing and the outcomes they're delivering for students, that there is a mechanism for employees, for the workforce to continuously learning. One problem, and I've been in that space for a long time, is that the methods that are being used today are definitely not always effective. I don't want to generalize, but there's too much training that is very sort of off-the-shelf, video-based, theoretical, and really don't align to the skills that employees need. You can see, I love that chart actually. You can see the type of retention if you read something, if you watch something passively, we call it passive learning, or if you actually practice. And this is a pretty, credible institute publishing that. You have learners that are frustrated because they want feedback. You have very low retention. I mean, to some extent, we wouldn't even think twice if we were thinking about how do we learn an instrument? How do we learn even how to ride a bike if we go all that way back? Or how do we learn how to play tennis? Obviously, you have to practice. If you were just watching a video, you wouldn't learn anything. But somehow when it comes to continuous upskilling or corporate development, this seems like less obvious to many, and understandably so. I mean, online learning has been relatively recent, where traditional courses would just be turned into a video, but it's just not that effective. So let me talk about how we've sort of seen companies really try to overcome this misalignment and almost build a sort of playbook. I mean, we've been in the business of really providing skills assessments. I think over the past 10 years, we've had 14 million, 15 million unique skills assessments, a lot of which in a technical space, but that's evolved. And so verifying skills, and I will double click on each of them, is definitely the first step, whether it's for hiring or when your early talent comes on board, understanding what are the skill set at the individual level, at the collective level, what are the trends that you're seeing in a way that's objective, and I get to that in a moment. The second is, once you've done that, how do you close that skills gap? What are the interventions that are as close to the role of the employee as possible? Again, sort of staying away from, or at least complementing, just pure video or generic training. And then lastly, we'll talk about AI, of course, why not? But on really leveraging AI in a way that's personalizing. I heard Nicole earlier talking about a copilot and getting feedback. There's definitely something there that is a great value add. All right, let me double click. And I don't know why my slides turned red, but it's fine. I will speak to those. So again, we've delivered so many skills assessments. I want to give you a few, I would say, best practices, if that's helpful. But I would say the first is, when you assess your talent, don't assess too much on specialized skills. Try to focus on core skills, because otherwise you really may miss out on some great people. I would say, secondly, multiple choice question. I just think, I don't know, I feel like it's just not going to give you the objective assessment of a skill as you probably want or need. Those can be very limiting and really letting someone be in a real world scenario. Thirdly, if you use assessments, again, whether it's for hiring or for assessing your workforce or certain teams or certain business units, try to really find an assessment that's fair, that's consistent. I would say that's validated by IO psychologists, ideally, that has market validation. And I mean, there's not really a higher stake than hiring. And I don't need to tell this audience, but like when you use assessments, you really need to trust the signal. It's too much of a stake. And so really making sure these assessments are robust and reliable. And then try to identify for your early talent pool, do you see patterns? Do you see gaps? What do you really see, both individually, but also across maybe certain populations, certain groups, certain business units, where you could potentially do some learning interventions? Some of the best-in-class companies we're seeing actually assess their people before delivering a learning journey, so that it's very much aligned in a sort of end-to-end way. All right, once you've identified the skills gaps and you've assessed your people, well, obviously you want to act upon it. So what now? And so in terms of closing the skills gap, we see a lot of, I would say, great outcome and impact of learning interventions that, as I spoke a little bit about earlier, are very hands-on, practical, and really simulate what someone would be doing in the role. So if you're coding, you would be essentially really coding and not just, answer sort of a multiple choice question. You're able, and I show you in a few minutes on a video I want to project, but you can do essentially customer de-escalation, sales discovery conversation, improve a financial analysis model. And so there's a lot of different ways the task in a role can be simulated. Because when you think about it, a specific role has typically the same type of core skills required. And usually the tasks that go with that role, tend to be pretty much the same. And so you're really able to put someone in a situation, in a simulation, and have them practice in a very safe space environment. All right, number 3. This is where AI, and again, going back to Nicole's comment earlier, in this sort of personalized feedback, can really be a game changer. I mean, how often do we want to have a colleague or a peer or a manager sit down and practice a crucial conversation, right? I mean, one, it's not that pleasant to ask someone too much, and two, it's not always very comfortable to practice in that way. And so having this safe space environment, having this AI tutor that is context aware, that knows what you've done, and that really gives you guidance and assess what you do, helps you, gets you unstuck. We've seen that being just an amazing sort of enhancement in the learning experience. Again, it's not supposed to replace everything, but it just really gives you that sort of learning companion the whole time. All right, so now I'm going to show you what it actually looks like. I wish I had been able to really demo you the actual conversation simulation in real time.
Let's start off with a lesson. So here we're learning a little bit about the course we're going to take. In this case, it's about the power of meaningful conversations. So we're going to see some examples, some explanations. If I prefer to watch a video, I can do that too. And our progress is tracked along the way. Now, once we take the lesson, we're going to go ahead and start a practice. Let's see how that works. So in this practice, I'm going to play the role of a sales manager at a company called Survey Flow. Now, I have noticed that some of my team members aren't engaged during meetings and customer interactions could be more effective. So I'm going to have a conversation with Milo here about the role of meaningful conversations. And I'm going to seek his advice on strategies to create a supportive environment that encourages active participation. These are all concepts that we talked about in that lesson. Let's go ahead and start.
Hey, how are you? How do you currently view the role of conversations within your team and with your customers?
You know, Milo, honestly, conversations are just part of the job, and people need to accept that this is what they need to do and they should get it done, you know?
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. It's definitely an expected part of the role. I'm curious though, have you found that these day-to-day conversations ever make a real difference in how your team works together or in how your clients respond?
Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to end the conversation there, but let's go ahead and submit and see what happens. Cosmo here, our AI tutor, is going to be checking my work with this conversation and giving me some tips on how I can improve in the future. So in this case, I obviously didn't handle that conversation very well. And Cosmo is going to call me out and say, hey, we talked about this in the lesson. You said conversations are just part of the job, but you didn't really explore how they can build connections or help your team and customers. He's going to give me some tips for what I can do next time so that I can improve and do a better job.
All right, so hopefully that gives you a sense of the real world situation where you speak to an AI. I know it's a little bit strange at first, but actually you really get used to speaking to Milo. And then Cosmo is context aware. So Cosmo is going to pick up on what you've said in that specific conversation, but knows also what you've done in the past. So that's just an example of how this sort of experiential learning, real world simulation is being used by a lot of companies that we work with. And so if I had to sort of recap the landscape, I mean, a lot of organizations are trying to either solve for scalability and really reach as many employees as possible. And certainly that's doable with, you know, MOOCs and YouTube videos and you name it, all the open content, which is very valuable. Or the effectiveness, in this case, skills acquisition, where you have obviously one-on-one coaching or exec education, but that's very costly and it's very hard to scale. So we're really trying to embrace this approach of experiential learning, instant feedback, and the skills verification. Because again, we don't have a lot of time to learn. We have busy schedules, and when we learn, probably a lot of us want to be pretty intentional about what we get out of it, what are the outcomes, and that's where skills as almost a new currency is really important to kind of bring it back to that. All right, so with that said, I just want to share a couple of more slides. One is around a program that we run with eBay. So essentially, eBay had identified underserved students who wanted to really get internships, summer internships. And the whole goal of the program was to upskill them and actually have them do a pre and post assessment around their coding skills. And so they went through the assessment for learning programs and then reassessed again at the end. I'm not going to go into every single bullet point here, but at a super high level, you can see the big jump in coding score pre and post after taking the learning programs. It's a 32 point average increase, right? I think you see it on the slide. And so just again, pairing the assessment of skills of your workforce, really being intentional about the type of learning you deploy, and then reassess again is really where we see eBay as an example, but a lot of companies going in that direction too. I mean, a lot of companies really want to become what they call SBO, skills-based organization, but how do you actually do that in practice, right? Okay, so just to sum up, I think timing is good. I have a minute and a half left. Just a few thoughts. I mean, one is it's not a dead end. I think there is a lot of uncertainty, but also a lot of opportunity ahead. I think what we're discussing today around, what's happening on campus, how employers are trying to figure out how to verify skills and how to make sure that the applicants are actually job ready, I'm sure will sound very different in a year or two from now. I mean, the speed at which things are changing, especially with Gen AI, is just absolutely mind-blowing. I see it really in the higher education space as well. But a couple of thoughts. One is universities. There's so much happening that is giving me a lot of hope and confidence from, competency-based education to real experiences for students to prepare for what employers want, to really benchmarking students and helping them understand this language of the corporate world and how to even know about their own skill set and speak to it in their interview and be very close to what these expectations are. And then on the company side, I mean, we're lucky to be part of the disruption around skills-based hiring. We have, I think, 10 years ago, it wasn't even something companies would even consider. And now we see companies every day saying we receive not 100, not 500, but 10,000 applicants for a role. How can we actually make sense of that? And so seeing so much happening on the side of, embracing the skills-based hiring disruption, so to speak, but also really becoming skills-based organization and thinking holistically end-to-end from the moment you hire to the journey of the employee all the way to departure, and how you really think about that journey, how you think about internal mobility, how you identify and accompany the employees based on the skills that they have and possess, and I see I'm at time. So lots of, I think, opportunity ahead. Really looking forward to hearing what's top of mind for you and really appreciate the attention. Thank you so much.